up, BookTube? What's up, BookTube? Got a couple reviews for you today. I have 4 books that I want to talk about today. 2 I have here as physical copies. John Bellairs' The House with the Clock in Its Walls and Fantasticland by Mike Brokoven. I also have 2 Audible books that I listened to. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt and Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. So that's our 4 for today. I want to start with The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. It was released in September 2013. It is fiction / suspense. I found this book via a closet unhaul by BooksandLala. After she read it, she was upset that it had sat there that long and ended up being amazing. Had that happen with books, I felt her pain at having something wonderful having sat there for so long. So based on the premise of the book and her opinion of it, I wanted to read it because that's one of the most amazing things about BookTube. I feel like all of the books that I'm reading are so wonderful because I can get an idea ahead of time if I'm going to like it or not. It really has helped me weed out a lot of books that I probably would have read otherwise. It's set in New York and Las Vegas. The book spans over the majority of the main character's life. A little boy named Theo Decker, whose mother dies at the beginning of the book in a terrorist attack while they're visiting an art museum in New York. In the heat of the moment, a dying man amidst this crumbling museum suggests to him that he should take this amazing painting, which I think made sense to him at the time. It was a favorite of his mother, so he was familiar with it, and he keeps it with him almost as a talisman to her and her memory. He's also scared into hanging on to it, as he's aware the museum is looking for the lost paintings that had occurred at the tragedy. The story follows him from each living situation he encounters, taking him from New York to Las Vegas to stay with his dad and his dad's girlfriend, Xandra, and then back to New York with the illicit painting in tow. The book's a bit controversial as far as ratings go. Some love it, some loathe it. I absolutely adored it. I love art. I think her intention for this book is almost for it to be like a painting in written form, specifically that chained up little bird that is the Goldfinch. He's definitely dealt an unfair hand. The last section, A Message from Grown Theo, hit me really deeply, and many others found it to be the polar opposite, and a lot of people didn't like that it ended that way, but it made sense to me. So I got it. I get ya. I loved her style of writing. I found it to be very flowing and smooth. Granted, I did listen to it on Audible since the length of this book is tedious and intimidating. I love books, and I love that about Audible. I tend to choose books on Audible that are 30 to 45 hours long because that's such 700 pages takes a long time to read, and we don't always have time for that, and it can be very intimidating and maybe not get read. So I'd much rather listen to it on Audible than not read it at all. I was obsessed with what was going to happen to Theo, and I was thoroughly amused by his antics. I liked, everything that they did. I liked it. So one of my favorite parts about this book, oddly enough, is Boris, his little buddy that he meets in Las Vegas. The narrator for Audible did such a wonderful job with Boris. I think it really gave him so much character that that turned out to be one of my favorite parts. Like, I now have a Boris in my head for whenever I read it. That's what he's going to sound like. As for a dislike, it was a little bit long and dragged out here and there. Luckily, I was listening to it on Audible, so that part didn't affect me so much. You can still continue on with life and do stuff as it's rambling on. The majority of the time I'm listening to this on the way to and from work. I'm always going to have time to listen to Audible because I'm always going to have a commute to work. As long as I'll have a commute to work, I will always need to listen to books in the car. Okay, back to where I was at. All in all, I absolutely loved this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, 2 thumbs up. It was It was lovely. I thoroughly enjoyed it. May not be everybody's cup of tea. It was definitely my cup of tea, though. So I guess that would be like peppermint extra honey. That's, that's what the Goldfinch is. So next, I read The House with the Clock in Its Walls. I got this from Book Outlet for a couple bucks. It is written by John Bellairs. It was released in 1984. So I am 1 year older than this book. I found out about John Bellairs through RichardMediaGeek, who is finally making videos again. Thank you so much. So I picked this one up to start with. And usually enough, it's not one that he'd read because he's reading it now, and he mentioned that it's not his favorite, but I loved it. So I feel like that means I'll like the rest of them even more, which is wonderful. So it's about a young boy named Lewis who is living with his wizard uncle. He is not the most popular little boy, and in an attempt to draw in his new little buddy, he decides to experiment with magic himself. Because he has shown he's invited his friend over, and they have watched his uncle do magic. So he decides to kind of seal the deal and impress the friend. He's going to try magic himself. His plan backfires, though, and it scares away his little friend and unleashes, I believe it's a dead witch in the process, which he had no intention of doing. It just, he happened to pick, like, the biggest, baddest spell he could find whenever he did decide to do a spell. So I thought it was really well written, and have since bought another two that are coming in my birthday box of books that I ordered for myself from Book Outlet. It wasn't everyone's favorite. I'm hoping, like I said, that I love the rest of them even more, because I adored this. Which brings me to my dislike. I am super bummed. I am just finding out about this now. I would have loved these as a child. I am genuinely sad that I did not read them as a child, because my adult mind cannot make quite the grandiose response to its simplicity as my young mind would have. This would have just blown me away as a 10-year-old. So I really wish I would have read it then. I love how relatable Lewis is. He's not the most popular kid or attractive, yet he has something in him that none of the other kids have. If I lived in this book, I would have been friends with him. I would have seeked him out and been like, it's okay, dude. We can hang out together. We can chill. I got you. Let's go read this crazy scary book you found. So overall, I don't remember what I gave it on Goodreads, but I absolutely love it. I love so many of the books that I'm reading lately. I'm so grateful to BookTube for exposing me to such wonderful books, and thank you, Richard at Richard's Media Geek, for letting me in on John Bellairs. Like, I'm so late to the game, but I'd rather find out about him at 34 than not at all. So that's a really good one. We'll move back on to another Audible. I did purchase The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. This was released this past October 2017. I found out about it because it was all over YouTube and BookTube and Facebook. It is set in 1950s New York, and a little bit of it at the family home in Massachusetts, the Owens family home that's in Practical Magic as well. I waited a little while before breaking down and purchasing this book. I wasn't thrilled with Practical Magic, so I was expecting a bit of the same. I have a tendency to shirk the bandwagon, which sometimes bites me in the butt because I can miss out on a good thing, all on account of my stubbornness. But I feel like that's better than being a bandwagoner. No, it's bad. And it's not like I waited that long. It came out in October. I read it in December. But yeah, still biting me in the butt nonetheless, because it was genuinely awesome and amazing. This book is a prequel to Practical Magic, containing the lives of the aunts, Jet and Frances, along with their brother Vincent, whom I don't believe was previously mentioned, but is a lovely character nonetheless. He is the first male born into an Owens family in a long time, and I think that gives him a little extra magic. This book makes up for the lack of magic that's in Practical Magic. It also ties in the Owens curse and all the problems with love that the movie addresses, but that Practical Magic didn't. So Susanna, the children's mother, is against magic and doesn't allow love or witchcraft in her home, yet their Aunt Isabel allows them to explore their heritage and their differences and teaches them while still allowing them to fully make a mess out of their own lives. I found myself completely spellbound with this. I was familiar with the characters, yet there was so much more to learn, as you never do get to learn anything about these women when they were children before they adopted the girls. Practical magic really starts more off, when they adopt the two girls. So it was touching and teaching and magical above all else. I will most definitely reread it someday. It seems excessive to have books on Audible and also the physical copies, but it's art. It's life. Art is life. You gotta really enjoy the things you enjoy, and if I enjoy it that much, I want to have both of them. So I really didn't have too much of a dislike for the book. So my dislike is going to be that it's not a movie yet. I know it just came out in October, but y'all get on it because I'm ready for number 2. And then finally, the very last one, number 4, is Fantasticland by Mike Brokoven. I do hope that is how you pronounce your name. This was released in October 2016. It is a horror thriller set in Florida, a little bit forward in time, which actually isn't that far from where we're at now. It's set in September of 2017, which I do believe they had a major hurricane September of 2017. Or was it October? September, October. They had a major hurricane, so this kind of is a little weird. November 2017, it's in my Throat Club box. I was so intrigued by the synopsis of this book, but ended up accidentally assuming it meant something else entirely. I just view life differently than others sometimes, I guess. So, with that being said, this book has absolutely nothing to do with zombies. Fantasticland is set in the Atlantic coastal region of Florida, at a amusement park that doesn't exist, so a mock amusement park that supposedly rivals Disney and Universal. They put this park closer to the water than it was suggested they should have, but the owner has fantastical ideas and always gets what he wanted. So years later, a major hurricane heads for Florida, and the park's backup plan is to pay a skeleton crew to watch over everything post-hurricane to reduce the chance of vandalism and theft. Little do they know that being cut off from the world will cause a modern-day full-on Lord of the Flies situation with tribes and raids and killings, you name it. No one is safe, and it's absolute craziness. My dislike for this book is that each chapter is told in a different person's perspective, so it feels excruciatingly slow to get through each scene and find out what happens the next, because it'll kind of start with one person and they won't finish what's going on. It's like the next person needs to finish it, so you got to get all the way through the beginning of the next person's session to see what happens in the end of the last person, and creates this long unraveling of tension, which I totally get, but I did find myself longing for the traditional formation of a book that I could just plow through. I grew up in Florida, and I love the theme parks and experienced a few hurricanes myself, so the premise was very intriguing. But again, it probably would have been better with zombies in it, though. That's what I have. 2 Audible, 2 physical books. These 4, this one and the Goldfinch are definitely, and yeah, Rules of Magic, the Goldfinch, and John Bellairs were all wonderful, wonderful, very good books. This one, so. It was different, but not something I'm ever going to reread. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know if you have read these books and what you thought of them as well. Thank you so much.